Hello, everybody. So I think now that the dust is starting to settle on what Donald Trump has called yesterday the 12-day war, as opposed to a third Gulf War, we ought to really ask ourselves what we have seen over the last 2 weeks. What was this all about? So let me make a short video today, just contemplating a little bit what all of this means. Yesterday it still seemed as if though the ceasefire proposal that came out of the blue from the White House, and after Iran had sent missiles into or over a US base in Qatar, the largest one in the region, it seemed as if though this was just another ruse. I mean, the ceasefire agreement could have been another ruse just in order to, again, make Iran feel safe and adhere to and stop firing at Israel right before maybe starting another attack on Iran, because already the first two attacks came out of the blue and were celebrated by the United States and Israel as a great surprise and a great success, because they managed to pretend that there was still diplomacy ongoing while in fact there already was attacks were planned. And don't get me wrong, this is still a possibility. It's still possible that in a few hours, in a few days, the attacks from Israel and the United States might resume on Iran. That's still on the cards. But as it looks at the moment, it seems that actually the three sides in this conflict, in this proxy war, actually for different reasons are agreeing to stop the fighting for now. And let's just ask ourselves what we've witnessed in this sense over the last 2 weeks, because I got messages from people asking me, look, was this all theater? Was this all just make-believe? Did all of them actually never mean any of the things that they did? Were the attacks on the nuclear sites actually just theater? And let me give you my 2 cents on this matter. First of all, I think that what we have seen at the very end, the way that this ceasefire was announced and the attack on the counterstrike on the US base, I think that last part, that was theater. The last dramatic kind of pronouncements and statements from Tehran, from Tel Aviv, that was theater. And Donald Trump then presenting himself as the great peacemaker who then announces a deal and everything, that is theater. But what we saw at the beginning, that was definitely not theater. There was a serious and honest attempt and a very serious attempt by Israel and the United States to actually carry out regime change in Iran. The issue of the nuclear weapons, that also was theater, but that's a theater that goes back a much longer time and all the way to at least 2018, when Donald Trump exited the JCPOA, which for all intents and purposes was working and was verifiably working. So if a constraining of the Iranian nuclear capabilities had been the goal, and not just window dressing, then exiting the JCPOA would not have been was absolutely counterproductive, or would not have been done. And also the negotiations in which the United States was with Iran right before the attack started. The 6th round of negotiations were supposed to happen Sunday after the attack by Israel. Those negotiations would have been continued, and the United States would have prevented Israel from attacking Iran, and certainly wouldn't have then bragged about having been in bed with Israel on planning the strike, and this being a great tactical success. So definitely the nuclear program of Iran, that one was window dressing, and that one was just make believe about what this whole affair is about, when in fact the goal here 2 weeks ago was to have a very quick, very high intensive military intervention in Iran and lead to regime change, right? To set everything in motion that would then result in the end of the Ayatollah and the end of the current political structure of Iran. And we see how from an Israeli perspective this actually makes sense, this belief, because just 2 years ago, nobody would have believed that Israel would be able to wreak havoc and wreak destruction and a genocide on Gaza. Nobody would have believed that they would be able to decapitate Hezbollah in Lebanon and wreak damage on them the way they did, and nobody would have thought it possible that Syria would collapse as quickly as it did. So in terms of the progression of Israeli war aims and genocide aims in its own region, they achieved very quick successes, and also had quite large success in getting getting Western support, European and US American support for their genocide in Gaza. So in a sense, I do believe that they thought seriously that this chain of success and chain of progress from their perspective could be continued and could be carried into Iran. In addition to that, Israel came under quite a lot of pressure the weeks before the attack on Iran because of a changing narrative when it came to Gaza and heightened media attention, also with the flotilla that Greta Thunberg that managed to not reach Gaza but at least reach a large audience and raise awareness for the absolute horrible situation in Gaza. And all of this together, I do believe, were reasons why Israel decided that now was the time to try their luck and do an all-out strike against Iran. There were also a lot of indications that we have that the Israelis seriously underestimated Iran's capability to resist such an assault, and overestimate their own ability to strike down whatever would come back from Iran. We see how the beginning of that operation seems to have been planned quite well together with the Americans in order to have maximum impact on Iran's on striking Iran out of without much warning, with Iran having its guards down. We also see how they tried immediately to go after the air defenses of Iran and after the counter-strike capabilities, but how despite initial successes, this didn't go all the way as Israel had wished to, and Iran very quickly was able to scramble together its forces and actually strike back Israel much more profoundly than apparently anticipated, and because also Israel was very quickly forced to basically mandate a media blackout in order to conceal the actual damage that was being done, because this is something that they obviously didn't want to show. They wanted to keep this pretense of overwhelming might and indestructibility. We also see how the Israelis immediately went to some of their favorite war tactics, which is the attacking of civilian infrastructure, attacking media infrastructure, the public broadcaster in Tehran, and how immediately the casualties on the Iranian side climbed to much higher numbers, and the civilian casualties than vice versa, where Iran constantly actually tried to counterattack proportionally and at installations in retaliation for their installations being attacked, which has been an Iranian tactic ever since years ago, in order to incentivize Israel to stop these bombings on their side. And Iran from the very beginning said if the Israelis stop, then they will cease with their counterattacks as well. So on the Iranian side, we can see how the military goal was to force Israel at some point to just stop firing, which then also played very neatly into the final days of what hopefully will be the 12th Day War and not break out again. when basically Donald Trump said now ceasefire is mandated, and the Iranians were able to say, like, look, we told you from the beginning, once the Israelis stop, then we are willing to stop our counterstrikes as well. So all of this was actually, I do think, was a quite serious approach. We can also see how in Western media, the whole the regime change narrative was built up very quickly, and how on Twitter there was just an immense flood of pro-Israeli whatever they were, bots and machine tweets about the Iranian general public about to stand up, about to revolt, about to overthrow their own government, if just a little bit more bombing came, and then everything would be over. And we know that this was absolute make-believe, because any one of us who is in touch with Iranian diaspora and Iranian colleagues, also the very critical colleagues, the ones who do not support the current regime, we all got the feedback immediately via WhatsApp and our channels that no, this was condemned by all of them. No sane, like, proper thinking Iranian actually in this moment actually wishes for more bombarding of their country. It led to the opposite. It led to these people rallying behind the flag and actually saying, like, look, this is in fact what the Revolutionary Guards told us all the time, that the Israelis are out to get us, and now they're on the verge of doing so. And of course, a lot of people, the Iranians, also anti-regime Iranians, they saw that what happened in Syria. They saw what happened in Libya. They are seeing what's happening in Lebanon, and certainly also in Palestine, right? And the onslaught, the slaughter of innocent civilians in all of these countries after the power structures fell is tremendous. No Iranian can want something for this to happen, except for the most ardent ideologues on the other side, the people with the few people you could see with the Shah's flag and so on. But in the great majority of Iranians seems to have been have rallied actually behind the Iranian government, and were glad that the counterstrikes took place. Now, this is an outcome that Israel wasn't hoping for, and with every passing day that the Iranian current government survived, and that the decapitation strikes that took place didn't take out the highest levels of the leadership, but high and mid-level military officials. With every day they survived, they actually figured out how to counter this assault, and also how to replenish their ranks. I mean, one of the mistakes by the Israelis and the US was to think that by just targeting top military officials and also top scientists that are working on these nuclear programs, you could thereby shut down both. The military would just desert, and the scientists, everybody would just run away, and the whole thing would be done, and then people would stand up, and so on and so forth. And this was not the case. I mean, actually, the military ranks just got replenished with younger officers who were still, like, had years and years and years of training, and were training for this very situation. And as several people on the internet pointed out, Iran's military strategy is not built around assault. It's built around defense. It's built around resilience for exactly this kind of case of attack. We know that the Israelis now also tried to use a lot of psychological warfare, not just on Twitter, but also a direct means of calling at least the 20 generals of the Iranians in both sides of the military and branches of the military, and threatening them, and that they would kill them, their wives and their children, if they did not immediately record videos saying that they would flee the country or pledge allegiance to a successor government. And also this this approach failed. None of these generals actually recorded any such videos. But there was a serious attempt. There was a very, very serious planned attempt at creating the situation in which Iran's state, the pillars of the government would collapse, especially the military, and that didn't happen. Now, what this led to is with over time with desperation on the Israeli side, right? Because the attacks from Iran that went through their air defenses kept coming, and even though the Israelis kept saying that they shoot down most of the things and that they had a plan and people were being evacuated, you could clearly see how Israel was suffering for the first time since the beginning of the genocide against Gaza, how some of their population were starting to seriously suffer. And there is no good sign for amelioration if this onslaught continues, and there's no good sign that the Israelis or the Americans would be able to shut down the Iranians' missile capabilities quickly. Although some of the missile stock was being depleted, it was being depleted much faster on the side of Israel, which is a really large strategic problem and vulnerability. So what are we learning through this episode? We are learning, on the one hand, that neither is Israel's Iron Dome and the other defense systems that they have, neither is that one impenetrable. It's actually relatively weak. We knew part of that already before. We just didn't know how far a concerted assault from the Iranian side could go. Concerted, I mean like a structured assault with like a lot of missiles and missile launches and so on. We didn't know what actually would be possible, but apparently a lot is possible. The Iran is able to strike almost any target that they're seriously after, including the Mossad HQ and infrastructure at their will. So if the Iranians decide that something will be hit, then if they use enough missiles, and then they will get through. Period. There's nothing that the Israelis can do against that. On the other hand, the same is true for Iran. Basically, any infrastructure that they have over ground is targetable by the Israeli/Americans with their systems. Even the airspace of Iran is apparently quite easy to penetrate, even with fighter jets and with these B-2 bombers, which then the United States started using from Sunday night in the over Iran, and with which they managed to hit the nuclear sites. Now, at the same time, it now seems also clear that the nuclear sites were not destroyed, at least not completely. There was damage done, but even the bunker buster bombs of the United States apparently couldn't do complete damage. I must also say that part of the reason why people think that this was all a large show and theater is because we've learned now that apparently the Iranians were able to evacuate the centrifuges and the fissile material that they had in Fordo because the rumor is that they were forewarned that these strikes were coming, while at the same time the Americans were able to evacuate their base in Qatar and already calibrate their defense system, because the Iranians apparently warned them that they would attack that base, and that this was a calculated retaliation in order to save face and then be able to wind down the hostilities, which is again why people think of this as a theater. But that outcome, that end part of the episode, I think was not foreseen in the beginning. I do believe that at least in the first week of the assault, the idea was a quick overthrow of the government. And then when that didn't happen, the desperation in both Tel Aviv and in Washington started mounting. And at some point, we had different options on the table, and one of these options was calculated and face-saving de-escalation, which is apparently what happened. So, was the attack on Fordo and the bunker buster bombs, was that still part of it? Again, I think in the end, yes. I mean, it was part of the drama of the entire thing, but not from the beginning. I don't think that the Americans tried to use bunker buster bombs and destroy these facilities with knowing that it would be impossible. But I think they wanted to try and wanted to see what would happen. And when it became clear that these strikes would not lead to the complete destruction and an immediate huge PR victory, they conjured up a PR victory and tried to explain this attack in a as favorable light to them as possible, including, of course, the propaganda that, oh, look, these B-2 bombers they took off from the United States, flew over Iran, hit precisely the target they wanted to hit and fly back. So Iran needs to learn that nobody f's with the Americans. The Americans do whatever they want. Also, that the entire diplomatic support that the US and Israel got for their highly illegal attacks against a UN member state. All of that is part of the success story that the West is trying to now project. But it is nevertheless in grand strategic terms a failure, because it didn't lead to the ultimate regime change. And in this sense, it was a very strong test of Iran and Iran's capabilities. It is one which, at least for now, the Iranians walk away intact. It's also clear, though, that this is not the last thing that will be seen in terms of military engagement between US, Israel on the one side and Iran on the other side. In a sense, it is a continuation of a creeping up of the US on Iran. Don't forget that in early 2020, the Americans, Donald Trump, killed the highest general of the Revolutionary Guards, Mr. Soleimani, when he was in Baghdad. The Israelis, they struck inside Iran and killed a leader of Hamas, who was a state guest at the time when the new president in Iran was inaugurated, Mr. Raisi. That was an attack. The Israelis, they keep killing people inside Iran. They keep using covert activities in order to kill scientists. They constantly do that. So Iran is under attack. Iran has been under attack for a long time, but the level of violence has been boiling on a quite low level. Now, again, over the past couple of years, the Israelis and Americans managed to just eliminate a lot of Iran's allies in the region. Of course, they are in the media, they are usually called proxies, because the word proxy is reserved for Iran and the evil side of the world, whereas the word ally is reserved for the United States and its friends. So, but the matter of the fact remains that Iran lost quite a couple of its allies in the region, and that now this was a moment when Israel felt emboldened to try to take out the big one, the final boss, so to speak, in this very sick game. But the Iran prevailed. But that's not to say that they won't try again. They probably will try again, because this is another thing that we are learning right now. I mean, when it comes to Western belligerence against states that they dislike and have already built up a very lovely narrative about how evil they are, then nothing will stop them. I mean, we have international law and we have the United Nations and we have all of these principles, but all of the principles do not matter at all when the West sets its mind to do a regime change or to impose its will on others. It is absolute dominance that these people strive for, and in pursuit of that, they throw out all and any kind of principles that they might have set up earlier. And we see, I mean, the best example of that is like what came out of Europe. I think France is the only one who kind of wasn't very happy with the United States then directly attacking Iran. Everybody else, um, including especially the Germans. They applauded this. Friedrich Merz, the new Chancellor of Germany, he used this now infamous slogan of Israel doing our dirty work. This is very important that somebody does the dirty work for us. And it's just the dishonesty is horrible, but it also means that the West is willing to throw out such principles. The West is willing to throw out and to throw out, the some of the most important and fundamental international treaties that we've got. I'm not just talking about the United Nations Charter. I'm also talking, of course, about the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, which regulates and has been successful, more or less successful since 1968, to prevent a large number of states from gaining nuclear bombs, nuclear strike capabilities, right? We currently still live in a world with only 9 nuclear weapon states, and that's largely thanks to the success of the NPT. 5 states have them legally under the NPT, the 5 halves: China, Russia, the United States, the UK, and France. And then we have 4 states that acquired them later against the rules of the NPT: India, Pakistan, North Korea, and of course the one that never actually admitted to it, but we all know it has it, which is Israel. And the fact that now Israel and the United States, 2 nuclear weapon states, attacked a non-nuclear weapon state, then just plays into the entire world situation in which also Russia violated the borders of a non-nuclear weapon state, Ukraine, and we are now seeing how the non-proliferation regime as it is, and the promise of the non-proliferation regime, is crumbling in front of our eyes, and how this is happening not just in the case of Russia against Ukraine with a lot of condemnation from the Europeans, but as soon as the shoe's on the other foot, all of the Europeans, all of them, including also the Australians and the Canadians, they all say, like, no, this is fine, this is good. This time, 2 nuclear weapon states attacking a non-nuclear weapon states, we like it. That's nice. This obviously sends a very clear message to the rest of the world, which is like, oh well, that NPT, that non-proliferation thingy here, that ain't gonna do no good. Also the fact, North Korea got nuclear weapons and didn't get attacked by a non-nuclear weapon state. Pakistan and India, the only ones who ever contemplated attacking them, were each other, so they are nuclear weapon states. This sends a very precarious message, and one which I myself, as an ardent, realist pacifist, don't want to support, but it leaves also me just with one conclusion, which is, if you want proper security and if you want proper deterrence, then, well, nuclear weapons seem to be kind of a prerequisite for that, because the diplomatic the setup that we have with treaties and with peer pressure to not do something collapses the moment that one of the great powers is actually is setting its mind to undermining a smaller one. So the weaker states in the system, and Iran here was definitely the weaker one. They are not protected by these agreements, not at all. It now also one of the things that happen is, of course, that now the stockpile of this nuclear fissile material, several hundred kilograms of uranium, are we don't know where they are, where the Iranians put them. We just know that they're still around, and that also the capabilities and the know-how how to make these weapons are still around in Iran. And although Iran had a very clear agreement, I mean an internal policy of not developing these weapons, I do think they will seriously go over their policy here, and so they should, because it seems that this hasn't their approach hasn't worked. The entire idea of maintaining the specter of a bomb in the future, even though you have a policy that doesn't allow for having it, didn't work, didn't deter the United States. On the contrary, it led the US and Israel to have an excuse and then rally everybody else behind them in order to have that attack. So this now begs the question: what is, well, first of all, is the episode over? The episode is over for now. I think there's going to be a break because all parties actually need a break for different reasons. Israel needs to replenish its capabilities. So does Iran and the United States too. There are good reasons for Donald Trump to wind this down. One of them, of course, being that his MAGA base is fracturing, and he doesn't want to let go completely of the image that he fostered. On the other hand, what Brian Baletic calls continuity of agenda, and the United States going into one direction only, that trajectory didn't change. So maybe the timeline did, but the trajectory probably didn't. It is only a matter of time until Israel and the US will try something like this again, and it might be rather sooner than later, because now they are aware of what kind of military capabilities the Iranians have if they just put their minds to it. And we know that Israel before, with its immediate neighborhood, had a policy of striking everybody and then stopping and striking again and stopping. And they used to call this mowing the lawn when it came to the Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank, to sporadically just try to decimate again the abilities of whoever they perceive as their immediate enemies. So it wouldn't surprise me at all, or it's rather what I expect, that they will apply this also to Iran. And let's not forget, the Israelis also have a very long history of then breaking their own ceasefires, although when it comes to Iran, they will probably think about this twice, because Iran made it unmisunderstandably clear that they will fire back. They will not accept things like what the Syrians had to accept, that Israel just sporadically every couple of months just bombs again the tamaracks and the buildings of Damascus airport. They just did that, just like that, because they could, and there was nothing Syria could do against that. So the Israelis just did. They just sporadically always tried to eliminate some of the infrastructure of this that the Syrians would have needed in order to develop, because they could. And there was nobody in the West who would stop them, and there was nobody powerful enough to support the Syrians to make it stop. Now, the Iranians tried very, very hard to make the point that militarily this will not succeed with them, but the Israelis also have a track record of then trying all of these covert operations. And one more thing that we've seen is, of course, that Iran is very bad at acting against covert operations, very bad at dismantling sleeper cells inside Iran. The ability of the Israelis to just subvert their structures and also spy on the Iranians and know where the generals are and target the scientists and so on. All of these abilities are there on the side of the Israelis, and the Israelis are using them for maximum damage and maximum surprise elements. And this is something that Iran will need to be worried about 24/7, 365 from now on. If they and they need to figure out a way in order to dismantle this and make their own communications much safer. So episode over for now. War definitely not. This is just the end of a battle. The next one will come around, because we know that the US and Israel are dead set on destroying Iran, which again is so ironic, because the reason, especially people in the West and in Europe, has been saying why this is fine is because Iran has been chanting death to Israel and death to America, when in fact it is utterly clear that it is them who try to eradicate Iran, right? And that this is a long-term goal of theirs. And I don't need to repeat all of the indications that we had with all of the plans that have been around by the neocons for bombing the Middle East, 7 countries in 5 years, and so on and so forth, of which the last one is, of course, Iran. But now the last one is apparently the place where they hit a brick wall, at least for now. But again, if Iran's regime change doesn't happen in 2025, it could happen in 26, 27, 28. And it is absolutely clear that some of the planners and masterminds of these kind of nefarious schemes in both Washington and Tel Aviv are already working on the next episode. But at least for a short period of time, there seems to be a ceasefire. What are the consequences of this? Again, one of the consequences is definitely that the NPT is now in serious danger, if not terminally ill. I do not see how any more or less reasonable, rational state does not take this as a very important indication for rethinking their nuclear doctrines. We also see that this is though leading to definitely more insecurity in the system, definitely. That some of the key assumptions that we had since the end of the Cold War are now again put into jeopardy and into question. And that's not just, as the Europeans want to say, because of Russia's attack on Ukraine. It's now also because America and Israel's attack on Iran. It's just more instability, more reason to worry about what rogue states like the US are able and willing to do in order to achieve goals, even if those goals are stupid or out of reach. Or like, again, this dishonest way of communicating what you are about. This needs to worry everybody, and it will. We see that this episode caused new fractures in the way that different countries perceive others. We see that Japan and South Korea, they cancelled their participation, or the top leadership, the Prime Minister of Japan and the President of South Korea, they cancelled their participation in the currently right now ongoing NATO summit in the Netherlands, because apparently they have reasons for not wanting to be put under pressure in order to increase their defense spending to 5%. They also, both of them, were unhappy with the US attack on Iran. They are not on board with the rest of the collective West. So this is a new development. So overall, I do think we can expect a re-evaluation of several countries of how they want to interact with these alliance systems, because we can see how they build pressure. We see it right now, how the NATO is working on a 5% expense, 5% GDP expenditures on defense for the entire club, and how this is making countries worry in the context of what we have seen, what the US then apparently also wants to achieve for its strategic goals, even if these strategic goals have nothing to do with European goals, despite the fact that all European leaders have rallied behind the US flag and given their support. It is absolutely clear that a new Gulf War in the Middle East would have devastating effects on the Europeans, and this is especially clear on the lower levels. I mean, for the general public, but it is something that the current really abysmal leadership of Europe still tags along. More consequences are that that probably we will see a closer coordination between Iran, Russia, and China, definitely. We know that before this episode, it was the Iranians who said no thank you to a hard military alliance with the Russians. Even though the Russians offered a mutual defense pact, it was the Iranians who said no. This led to some questions of how wise that was and why it was. To me, it's clear that the Iranians do not trust anyone, which is actually a very sane approach at international relations. Despite having good relationship with Russia, the Iranians did not forget, apparently, that it was the Soviet Union that in 19 42, 43, invaded them when Iran was neutral during the Second World War, and then being accused of being too friendly to the Germans, they were invaded by the Soviet Union and the Brits together, right? It was Britain and the Soviet Union who did that. That is something that seems to be still a memory that seems to be lingering around. There are other memories of the more recent past in which the relationship with Russia wasn't brilliant. So Iran is very aware that international relations is an up and down, and that the only one that at the end of the day you can really trust is your own resources. And the strategy so far has been to do cooperation with Russia and cooperation with China, but without a real hard security mutual defense pact. They might rethink this now out of sheer necessity. I don't think it is a good idea to do a hard security, mutual defense pact, but it might be a necessity for the Iranians if they feel that this might improve their position toward Israel and the United States, because if they try again, then you need some form of deterrent. A nuclear bomb can be a deterrent, more missiles can be a deterrent, but also a military defense agreement with Russia might be another deterrent, right? So they will think in those terms of how to up their deterrence, because that's exactly the same categories in which the West is thinking. And at this point, really, the Iranians have proven that they understand that they need to match this kind of warmongering with capabilities on their own side. However, keeping in mind that the Iranians were so far relatively successful in actually creating their own indigenous defense capabilities, we can expect that they will try to continue doing that at as fast a speed as possible. But the change in foreign policy toward Russia and maybe a out of necessity, a further integration might be very well on the cards. And we've seen that the Iranians, before they struck back, they immediately talked to the Russians when the Americans actually attacked them, that there is a pretty high level of trust between Tehran and Moscow, at least when it comes to escalation, to seek each other's advice. And it would surprise me if something similar was not also underway with China, although for what exactly it is is hard to predict. But it would make just the most sense if maybe not a military alliance, but increased cooperation was an immediate outcome of this episode. Also because Iran now actually gathered a lot of very valuable data, that I'm pretty sure the Russians and the Chinese would want in terms of what these U.S. systems were able to do, what Iran was able to detect, with what kind of technology on their side they were able to detect it, what could be intercepted, what wasn't able to be intercepted, what technologies worked and what didn't. I'm pretty sure that there's a high interest from China and Russia to know more about that, and probably the willingness of Iran to engage in such discussions if they are able to get something in return from these two superpowers. So overall, this makes everybody less safe. This was a horrible moment. I do hope the immediate moment is over. I don't think the war is over. I think ceasefire is the right way of putting it. It's a very sad thing to say, but I don't see any reasons why the structural conflict that Israel and the United States want with Iran and want with Russia and China, why we would assume that this one is over. We've all now learned that even if Donald Trump was honest, or is honest in his desire to de-escalate, that the system, the warfare and warmonger system of the United States, with all the different ways in which it works through the military-industrial complex, through the media propaganda, through the Israel lobby, all of these elements, they create a constant push toward more warfare, and the Europeans are thoroughly integrated into that system. They're not a separate part. They are part and parcel of that system that then pushes for military solutions to diplomatic problems, which should be dealt on a completely different level. But that is unfortunately the system the West, the collective West, has built, and that system is extremely resilient. For Russia, China, Iran, and so on, the question will always be how to interact with that system of mass violence and warfare. But for the time being, I think what we're seeing is at least the capability, again, the capability of Russia to resist this proxy war or the coalition war that was waged against it. We see now Iran's ability to at least fend off this first very large-scale attack, not first attack per se, but first attack at this level of violence. We will see whether the West actually learns from this, that they shouldn't try to repeat this or try to do it with China. But the West, this system of mass violence, unfortunately has a very bad track record of learning from these mistakes, because, and I've made that point in other episodes as well, victory is not necessarily the goal. Just wreaking havoc and hurt on the other side is already a form of a victory, is a form of something that they want to achieve, even if it comes at costs to themselves. So the system is one that wants to inflict hurt on others, not necessarily an all-out victory. And as John Mearsheimer says, the United States keeps going on into these adventures, and Israel goes on into this without a theory of victory, because victory is not necessarily what the system produces. The system produces violence. Violence is in and of itself part of the goals of what the system does. And this is the challenge that the civilized part of the world, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, Southeast Asia, Africa, South America, the global South, the civilized part of the world, the global South, what they are facing, that they somehow have to figure out a way to prevent this Western system of doom from wreaking havoc in the first place. It's a very tall order, and it's in this sense has been unsuccessful, because the system already produced violence and produced 900 to 1,000 dead people in Iran, which again the system will look at as a little win. It's like good for us. It's of course horrible for humanity, but that's the world we live in. If something more comes to mind, I will make another video. Thank you very much for your attention.